truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The newest show sensation streaming throughout the multiverse. Your hang place in cyberspace for paranormal news and views. Taboo Topics with Gene Broida.
Welcome, everyone, to Taboo Topics with Gene Broida. I'm your host, Gene Broida, also known as Lightworker 111, beaming to you from sea to shining sea across the Americas and the world every Sunday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States and Canada on my Taboo Topics with Gene Broida YouTube channel at tabootopics.life/shows and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. Panelists on Taboo Topics with Gene Broida read news articles about paranormal events, conspiracies, and other hush-hush subjects that we all probe further before moving on to the next taboo topic. On today's show, today being May 10th, 2020, had to think about that for a moment. Please welcome on today's show esteemed guest panelist Doug Auld, introspective thinker, problem solver, and empath. And welcome back, Corae, lifelong hereditary experiencer and psychic. Doug Auld, please share a bit about yourself with our global audience.
Hey, Gene, nice to be here. I have my dad was a car dealer, so I have a car auto mechanic background. And I was supposed to go into his business, and I learned mechanics and carpentry and welding and all sorts of hands-on stuff. And so I've always been very engaged in using my hands. And somewhere along the line, as we're going along, in my high school, which was a technical high school, my older brother Greg invited me to see a band. He said, get ready Friday, and I'm going to pick you up after school, and we're going to go down to Philly to see a band called The Doors. And I'm like, okay, who's The Doors at the time? You know, this is probably around 1970, 69 or 70. I'm just giving it a guess. Well, we got together, went down to see The Doors play, and my life was changed right then and there. Somehow I had an awakening from being this auto mechanic guy to taking an interest in music. And you know, the things that were going on in the late 60s, early 70s at the time. Went out and bought a Farfisa organ. We started our own band, and before you know it, we're playing in a group. I started to take classical piano and ended up playing at CBGB's in New York City, which is a very well-known cult club at this point. So my introduction into the world of creativity began. Also through my older brother, Greg. He took me to see Salvador Dali's art in the Cleveland Museum at the time. It was in Cleveland, Ohio. And I was knocked out by the paintings. They were like staggering. And I was like, oh my God, someone painted this? So did the same thing, came home. My brother was already painting. I watched his work, and I said, let me go out and get some oil paints. And within no time, I painted a portrait of Cat Stevens, the singer from back then. And my brother was like, who made this? I brought it upstairs, and everybody was like, how did you do that? And I'm like, well, you know, I figured it out because, you know, that's what I like to do. I'm a problem solver. I like to see what needs to be done and figure out a logical course of action to do so, and I'm pretty good at that. So that brings me up to being in the arts. And I would say that as my paintings grew and my music grew, I made this decision to get away from music because I didn't like to have to deal with other creative people. I was like sick of drummers not showing up or band members not being able to make it or girlfriend problems and moving pianos, because we used to actually move a grand piano with us, a baby grand, because I forgot to say that after my auto mechanics training, because I was in my band, I decided I'm going to get involved in learning to tune and rebuild pianos, which I learned, which is not the easiest thing to learn. I had a German piano tuner come to my house, and he tuned my piano, and I offered working for him for free. And that's how I got a job with him. And within no time, he started paying me, but we had a lifelong friendship, and he taught me how to tune pianos. And that was a critical thing in my life because that got me to make money in a short amount of time. So I could go out in the morning, tune a couple of pianos, come home, have $100 in my pocket, and spend the rest of the day on my art and my music. And that's how I found enough time to become a creative person. So anyway, when I left the music go, I became a full-time painter, and I've always taken on rather sort of like aggressive and rebellious kind of topics. I've never been satisfied to just paint nice little flowers or anything like that. So bringing this up to date, I did a series of nuns and priests that has to do with our exterior and our uniform and how our exterior lies to who we really are and can belie who's underneath. I did a series of work on burn survivors, adolescent burn survivors, and wanted to bring light to what are almost like visual lepers in our society today, because we have no idea how to deal with people that don't quite look right, that don't look pretty, that don't look whatever it is. We're a very Tinseltown world, and these people could never get jobs as bank tellers or somebody behind a counter. So I did a whole series of burn survivor paintings dealing with adolescent burn survivors. And I managed to get a 2-page spread in the New York Times with that work, which was pretty major. And I'm pretty much the first artist to ever get a burn survivor portrait in the National Portrait Gallery at the Smithsonian, which was quite something, a little bit of art history for me. And yet the art dealers and the art galleries kept away from me, because I'm not like figure it out and package it and sell it type of person. Now, as this is going along, I've always been fascinated with shows like The Outer Limits, Twilight Zone, all sorts of stuff that had anything to do with anything about looking to outer space and getting off this planet. So I would study all this kind of stuff, and I became a real like fascinated person with this. And I then decided to paint a series of whistleblowers because I had been studying the ufology circle. I know so many of the ufologists. I'm good friends with Grant Cameron and know many of the people in that field. And I decided I'm going to paint them and add them into a series of work called 100 Portraits of Whistleblowers. And I painted from ufology people to black ops people to any number of people who would rat out or blow the whistle on something that should be known about for the American public and the world.
And that's what we're seeing on the wall behind you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's part of a series. There's 100 of them, but that's part of a series of paintings of individuals who I included in my whistleblower series. So, and that can be seen online at my website, which is www.dougauld.com, DOUGAULD.com.
Thanks, Doug.
So
we'll have time at the end for shout outs for all that contact info. And I'm going to stop you right there, because now it's time to introduce our second panelist. I know you have a lot more to say, and you'll have more opportunity, but we're going to pass the baton. And Corae Hack, welcome back to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. Please introduce yourself to everybody in our worldwide audience.
Well, my name is Corae Hack, and thank you again, Jean, for having me on again. It just seems like I never have enough time to talk about all the things that have happened in my 59 years of life. I'm an evidential medium, and I never found out I was actually a medium till about 3 years ago. And I always thought I was just psychic. An evidential medium, well, particularly a medium, can talk or get information directly from those who have passed on, whereas a psychic doesn't communicate directly. They just are able to put their feelers out there and get information from other kinds of things that are going on, but they don't have direct communication in whichever way they do directly with what's going on. And I find it exciting and happy because things even happen in a regular kind of situation during life. I'm looking for something and I ask for help in finding it, and they'll just tell me where it is and I'll go look and there it is. So that kind of helps because I have a forgetful nature, and so they kind of help me a lot. I originally was born in Canada, and I was born in Calgary, Alberta. My family has a long history of being psychic mediums. My grandmother on my father's side, she was from Germany. She actually learned how to deal with cards. It was regular playing cards that she used, but she was able to do almost like a tarot card reading from regular cards. And she learned that from the gypsies, from the traveling gypsies in Europe. So she got an extensive training there, and she also did some palm reading and healing. She was awesome at doing healings and stuff like that as well. My father's sister also very dedicated and gifted in that way too. My dad didn't really want to have much to do with it, although I think he had an inkling of some of the things that go on in families, but he wasn't really interested in it. And then on my mom, she was also very clairvoyant as well. And she could look at pictures and see what the person was like, what they would do, if you could trust them, those kinds of things. And she would give a lot of warnings for things that were going to happen. So she was also very gifted as well. Her mother was left on the steps of a church when she was a baby. So we don't know what her background is at all. And that was in Germany. So I could even have things further back, but even on my dad's side, this goes back at least 20 generations in our family. And I know that I don't call it abducted because it doesn't feel forced or anything. I don't have negative memories about anything. And I actually look forward to it. I love seeing craft. I love getting downloads and information, and I just want more and more and more. And it never seems like it's enough because I'm excited for the next thing to happen. So I've had experiences where I've talked another language, where my husband has walked in on me and I'm talking another language to ETs. I've had creative symbols floating around my room when I wake up at night. I hear celestial music sometimes. I'm pretty sure that I have sometimes scratches and I don't know where they come from. And I've been told by a couple of mediums and psychics on where my implants are, and they've all indicated the same location. So I'm pretty positive I can actually feel one of them on my left knee. So that's exciting. I don't want them removed because I love the contact and I want more of it. I can't wait for the official kind of ascension to happen, although it's all kind of coming in at one time and it's heading towards there. But I love the experience of us kind of all coming together and ascending to another dimension, another loving, more peaceful community of souls who can grow in love and harmony and learn more about each other. So that's basically my background in terms of being medium. You know, I grew up I learned how to become a chef. I was a chef. I've had two of my own businesses, one in medical field, one in food. I got my Bachelor of Science degree in business operations. So much like Doug, I'm an efficiency expert and I'm a troubleshooter. So if you show me a problem, I try to fix it right away, which is annoying to other people. But so that's what I do. I'm also an artist as well. I do paintings and I do paper mache art as well, jewelry, stained glass, a lot of different things that I like. And I wish I could do more of it. But I got one son who came back from Canada with me, and he is also gifted as well, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. And then I have my dynamic husband over here, Ian, and I'm very lucky. We're both very lucky because we're interested in everything this together. Go to the MUFON meetings together, any kind of groups together, and we can share this. A lot of other couples tell us that their husband's not interested in it or their wife's not interested in it. And so I feel very blessed with Ian that he shows an interest in this. And
yeah, I agree. You're really, really, really lucky. And I'm so thrilled to have you back on the show, Corae.
Thank you,
You brought really a lot last time, and I'm looking forward to your contribution today too. And for viewers who've just tuned in, welcome to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast every Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, at tabootopics.life/shows and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. And I am your host, Jean Broida. I am a lifelong UFO researcher. I have so much in common with both of my guest panelists tonight. I had no idea, including I have a female relative. We called her a cousin, but she was actually, we called her Aunt Sylvia. She's actually a cousin, one of those things where she's like a third cousin twice removed or vice versa, second cousin 3 times removed, you know, that sort of thing. And she had learned to read regular playing cards in the old country, being Europe somewhere, and did that. That would have been in like the 1920s and 30s. So I too am a problem solver. I too am an empath, psychic. I consider myself to be a parapsychologist because in any matter of science, I recognize material science, the world around us, but also the unseen element, the parascience that literally surrounds our physicality. So a parapsychologist is a person who's interested in the psychology of paranormal events, for example. And my article today on today's show is going to touch on that very keenly. But I'm also a daily writer of conspiracy stories. I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist so much as a conspiracy synthesist. I synthesize information. I take data from as many sources as I can, cook it all up and figure out what I have made here, what's left over, synthesize, connect the dots, a lot of people call that. And I've also put my money where my mouth is and written a book called Unknown Objects, the top 10 US UFO cases on Amazon. Give that a read and you'll find out why you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs. So as I say, I do contribute regularly to several online publications, including thedailyconspiracy.com. And my background is an advanced degree in computer science with undergraduate work in psychology, education, and languages. I've done a lot of independent research. I know that one ufologist said if you took all the hours that I've studied UFO stuff, I'd have a PhD. Well, if that were the measurement, I would imagine each one of us sitting here right now would qualify for that. And how many PhDs would I have by now? I don't even care to count because it's not a contest, okay? It's not a contest. It's not an ego trip. The reality is that a growing number of truth seekers and star seeds are waking up in consciousness, and we're questioning the emotional impact of long-term sweeping official government cover-ups and what they're doing to us as a society, decade after decade after decade. These are remarkable times, especially right now, because light workers are awakening to these universal truths in numbers never before seen on Earth, as far as we know. And everyone here on today's panel hopes that you'll enjoy the show as much as we enjoy putting on. And we're going to be shedding some light in those dark corners of reality as we know it. So now let's begin talking about taboo topics. And Corae Hack has generously volunteered to offer up her article first. Corae, take it away. And let me unmute you.
So
Wait.
oh, I'm sorry.
No, it was me.
Okay. The article that I'm going to read, and I'm going to read sections of it, and it comes from Forbes on the website of Forbes, and it is by Jamie Carter. He is the writer of the article. On March 18th, 2019 is when he published this article. And I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to come up with some of the things that I disagree with as an experiencer, as a medium, and just as things that have happened in my life, I guess. But a lot of this information I would agree with is I think, pretty accurate. It's just another point of view or another opinion, I guess, right? And we all have our own opinions. Okay, so are we alone? Probably not. After all, astronomers have already found 4,001 confirmed exoplanets in our Milky Way galaxy and expect there to be over 50 billion exoplanets out there. For scientists gathering in Paris today, the question is different. Why haven't we made contact with alien civilizations? And that question I completely disagree with, because there have been millions of people that have made contact with aliens, with extraterrestrials, and they don't acknowledge the fact that this is actually going on. Scientists seem to have a little bit of a skewed and biased attitude that unless they experience it, it's not happening. And if it's not an experiment that can be duplicated, it's not real. And I completely disagree with that. So that's my opinion about that particular statement. What is the Fermi paradox and the great silence? Italian physicist Enrico Fermi asked, where is everybody? Back in 1950, in what's now called the Fermi paradox, it addresses a contradiction in astronomy and can be summarized thus. If extraterrestrial life and even intelligent alien civilizations are not just likely, but highly probable, then why have none of them been in contact with us? Are there biological and sociological explanations for this great silence? We are very interested in the scientific approach in the analysis of Fermi paradox and the search for intelligent life in the universe, said Cyril Bernheim and Bridget David at the Sciences d'Industrie. The Science Museum in Paris, that's hosting today's meeting. The question, are we alone, affects us all because it is directly related to humanity and our place in the cosmos. What are scientists doing in Paris? Well, leading researchers from the fields of astrophysics, biology, sociology, psychology, and history are meeting at the site. Every 2 years, METI, or the METI stands for Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They organize a one-day workshop in Paris as part of a series of workshops entitled, What is Life? An Extraterrestrial Perspective, said Florentine Rollin Circu, co-chair of the workshop and member of MTI's a board of directors. These scientists are discussing some pretty insane sounding questions. 1, are extraterrestrials staying silent out of concern for how contact would impact humanity? 2, Do we live in a galactic zoo? Should we send intentional radio messages to nearby stars to signal humanity's interest in joining the galactic club? Will extraterrestrial intelligence be similar to human intelligence? Did life get to Earth from elsewhere in the galaxy or interstellar migration? This puzzle of why we haven't detected extraterrestrial life has been discussed often. But in this workshop's unique focus, many of the talks tackled at a controversial explanation first suggested in the 1970s called the zoo hypothesis, said Ranlin Surso. Oh yes, the idea that we're being watched by aliens and perhaps even being protected by them. What is the zoo hypothesis? Well, this is a mind-warping idea that where alien civilizations out there, no, not on Akimanara, all know all about us, but purposely hide from us. It certainly explains the great silence. Perhaps extraterrestrials are watching humans on Earth, much like we watch animals in a zoo, explained Douglas Vakoch, president of METI. How can we get the galactic zookeepers to reveal themselves? At a workshop, Vakoch proposed that humans should be more active in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. If we went to a zoo and suddenly a zebra turned toward us, looked us in the eye, and started pounding out a series of prime numbers with its hoof, that would establish a radically different relationship between us and the zebra. And we would feel compelled to respond, he said. I guess only if you know zeros and prime numbers. I wouldn't know what they were doing myself if I spotted it. But that's just me, I'm not a scientist. It's hard to disagree with that. We can do the same with extraterrestrials by transmitting powerful, intentional, information-rich radio signals to nearby stars, he said. And what is the galactic quarantine theory? Think that the zoo hypothesis theory is insane? Well, that's nothing compared to another theory about alien benevolence. It seems likely that extraterrestrials are imposing a galactic quarantine because they realize it would be culturally disruptive for us to learn about them, said Jean-Pierre Gaspars, the honorary research director at the Institut National de Recherche Académique and co-chair of the workshop. That's obviously a French word. Cognitive evolution on Earth shows random features while also following predictable paths. We can expect the repeated independent emergence of intelligent species to the universe. And we should expect to see more or less similar forms of intelligence everywhere under favorable conditions, he added. There's no reason to think that humans have reached the highest cognitive level possible. Higher levels might evolve on Earth in the future and already been reached elsewhere. So what does the Drake question try to do? A formula to estimate the number of technological civilizations in the Milky Way galaxy. The Drake equation is an attempt to put the Fermi paradox into numbers. The Drake equation was posted in 1961 by Dr. Frank Drake, a radio astronomer at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in Green Bank, West Virginia. And what is the Drake equation? Okay, don't expect any answers here. That's great. It's an article. I was kind of hoping for some answers, but even they don't give those, right? The formula below, which comes from the SETI Institute, might seem impressive, but it's mostly guesswork. Practically speaking, its purpose is not to find a definitive answer, but to keep the discussion going and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And I mean, basically, it's like NR squared X, FP, X, NEX, FLX, FIX, FEX, and Scientists probably understand that. Mathematicians follow it. I have no clue. I use my innate telepathic gifts that I have developed in order to receive messages directly. So for me, that's a lot easier than trying to do a formula. I try to communicate directly, and I do directly communicate with ETs. I also communicate directly with Bigfoot or Sasquatch, specifically a class of the ones I communicate with are called the ancient ones, and they're far more advanced in the skills of what similarities humans and Bigfoot have more in common. It's easier for me to connect to this family of Sasquatch called the ancient ones. And I can be anywhere. I've been at a MUFON meeting when I've received a message from them to talk to somebody in the room. And I've gone and I've talked to them. And it turns out that the message they've given to me to talk to them about has been 100% correct. It still blows me away to this day, but I don't ignore messages anymore, because even though I don't know what they're for, they're meant for someone else. We just went to a meditation last Sunday, and I got information that the ETs were on this piece of land. I guess this piece of land is directly with Mary of Glennis. And I thought it was Mother Mary, Jesus' mother, that kind of was in charge of this. But apparently this is Mary of the Divine Light, which is not Jesus' mother necessarily. It's a whole bunch of interpretations. I didn't know this, but I was talking about the ETs that come into this space and how the communication, how this place will be a gathering place for people who have been getting direct ET messages. And Meg, the person that owns this property with her husband, Mark, shared after my comments that, yes, this is actually a Pleiadian ET contract place, and that all sorts of ETs are gathering in this area here, giving direct communications to people there. And so that was really cool that I didn't know anything about this and was able to tie in my gift with this. Also, I talked about 2 Sasquatch being on the land. And I said, the information I'm getting of a name, and I usually don't get names for Sasquatch because sometimes they're harder to pronounce. But I said, there's 2 of them. One in particular starts with like an H, like a Homer, and the M was it was kind of rough. I said, it's not an M, it's another letter very close to an M, like Homer. So anyways, I told Meg and her husband, Mark, and they came across it and they said, they laughed because he said, well, the one Sasquatch's name is Honer, which is an N instead of an M. So that they thought that was pretty incredible that I got that name pretty close to what it was. So even today, I'm getting a lot of confirmation of the information that I've been getting. And
So Corae, I just want to jump in here for a moment.
Mhm.
What was the title of the article that you just read?
I'll go back up. It's from Forbes.
Yeah.
And it's called, Are We in a Galactic Zoo Protected by Aliens?
Okay.
Yeah, scientists meet to investigate the Great Silence.
Okay.
So,
Why did you bring that and then follow it with the discussion of your personal experiences? Stitch those things together for me.
Right, because I find that information that I get in some articles, a lot of information that I get is true, but then I feel that sometimes information is placed into articles that are misinformation to lead people into a direction that is not accurate. And what it does, it actually makes people believe that what they know to be true as being invalid. Like, why haven't we been in contact with these civilizations? People who read that are going to think we haven't, when yet millions have. So
Yeah, I
that's
wanted you to reread that statement from the beginning of the article. I wanted to comment on that, and I bet you Doug has something to say about that too. I just know. He's telepathing to me.
Okay, so the first paragraph was, are we alone? Probably not. After all, astronomers have already found 4,001 confirmed exoplanets in our Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
And I expect there to be over 50 billion exoplanets out there.
Right.
For scientists gathering in Paris today, the question is different. Why haven't we made contact with alien civilizations?
That was it. Why haven't we made contact with alien civilizations? Well, what about Valiant Thor, for heaven's sakes? 1957. 1957, people.
Yeah.
Venusian, alleged Venusian. Maybe he wasn't really from Venus. Maybe that was convenient because we could pronounce Venus. Whatever. Spaceman, basically, with an entourage, military entourage, advising at the White House. That's the story there. I just don't buy it. And you know what? What I was going to say, and then I'll pass on to Doug here, because I know he's brimming with ideas. When I read that sort of a debunking statement at the beginning of an article, in other words, this is an article about numbers and probability, the odds. What are the odds of intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? So we go to Fermi's paradox. If they're everywhere, where are they? And then Drake's equation, well, statistically speaking, there should be lots of them. And how do we reconcile those when there's no evidence of UFOs or ETs? There's plenty of evidence of both. Doug, you're muted, buddy.
Can I just point out this book, the one Stranger in the Pentagon by Dr. Frankie Stranges? That's what you're talking about. And people,
right.
They can purchase this.
Yeah, hold that right up and hold it straight. Stop wiggling it, please. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So we got Stranger at the Pentagon, written by Dr. Frank E. Stranges. Stranges is the man's name. Thank you so much. And that's exactly the story of Valiant Thor, isn't it?
It is.
It is. So Doug, jump in. What do you think?
First of all, Corae, thank you very much. That was wonderful. And I got a lot of thoughts about it. First of all, what jumps out at me right away is usually when these, first of all, we have to understand the agenda and the motivation for someone writing such an article, number one, like what's their background, who's paying them, because there's always a follow the money that goes along with everything in the world. So who's paying them? Why are they writing something? What is the timing of their article? Why is it coming out whenever it came out? Okay, we could always look at that. But also, usually what they're talking about, or what I get from this person so far, and I'm not invalidating anything he said, I'm just basically thinking right away that he's talking about what visitations that are scientifically provable. And so if you're talking about provable, well, Valiant Thor, no, nobody really has any proof. Or if they do, it's going to be debunked 1, 2, 3, because what kind of proof is it, okay? What real, tangible, evidential, we do have photographs of Valiant 4, alleged photographs of Valiant 4. I've seen them. I know some people that know a lot about the story about Valiant 4. You probably have some, Corae. Let's see.
I've seen these photographs too. And again, as Doug points out, these are allegations. There's no proof that this is Valiant Thor from Venus, but it is some guy.
It's a guy. Not. Am I muted?
Yeah, so they do have pictures, but like you say, some say you can't prove it unless he's actually saying he can do something, and then we see him doing it. But just to see that is him, people will say, well, I don't know, I never met him.
Yeah, the story is allegorical. Is that the word? Allegorical. It's all allegations. It's hearsay, basically one guy's word, the guy who wrote the book, Strange's. But you get enough people telling similar stories, and all of a sudden, as a synthesist connecting dots, we see patterns, start to see patterns, and patterns become suggestive to statisticians, for example, people who play with numbers, people who deal with numbers. Was there anything else you wanted to add there, Doug?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, you were muted, Jean, when you spoke for.
I realized that.
And I didn't really hear what you said, but anyway, yeah. All I wanted to say was that a lot of people are going to simply run to their preset, which is you can't prove it. So I don't really know. Now, I most of the stuff that I know in my life, I end up realizing I know it mostly intuitively. The intuitive side of me fills in the spot of, do I buy this or not? And I'm a very skeptical person, especially on myself. I'm very skeptical. I question my own thoughts, motives, and things all the time, because that's the Virgo in me. I'm a person that likes to really look at everything and go, okay, wait a minute. Is that what you think? Is it nice that you think you saw an orb? Did you really see an orb? Was the orb dust in front of your lens? You know, I'm going to ask myself hard questions. I'm not just one of these people that buys every single thing that comes in front of me. But, you know, when you talk about proving things, and maybe we can't prove a lot of things like that, I really can't prove that I love my mother. How do I prove that?
Right.
I can't. What? Because I bought her flowers? Or that doesn't prove anything. What proof of a lot of things do we have? And a bigger problem that we're having today is that we're living in a time now where every bit of digital imagery can be faked and fudged and changed. So we have to rely on looking back at like the McMinnville photograph of the flying saucer in black and white in the sky, and things that at a time when they were like just regular film cameras with
film that went to the photo lab, as the pictures in the book that Corae held up were. They're from that era, the 1950s and 60s. Yeah. When we talk about filming something, because cameras used to hold film, youngsters, they weren't digital. And that's what we're talking about, chemical emulsions, harder to fake. Not impossible, harder.
And filming something is different than photographing something. See, today we're still photographing things. We're using that term even with digital, but it's a very, very different kind of photograph from the days of film cameras. But so anyway, I'm fascinated with the Valiant Thor story, and it dovetails a little bit into the story of Eisenhower and at Murak and the Etherians. And I love the story of the Etherians, and I love the story that Eisenhower was whisked away, saying that he had a dental problem, and nobody knew where he went, press, and everybody couldn't figure it out for that weekend or whatever, however they worked it. And it turned out that he was in, I think is it Anders? I forget what airfield it is now, but it was called Murak at the time. And he met with the Etherians. They landed, and everybody was like, oh my God, this thing is real. And there's an amazing letter between I think it's a Reverend McIntyre and Gerald Light from that period. In fact, Gene, I almost copied that to read today, and I didn't. It's interesting how close we are. But I almost copied that, and it is one of the most riveting letters I've ever read in all of ufology, of believability for me, to read this letter about what these people witnessed. And they were so amazed at what they witnessed that they said that they were coming home and were positive they would be seeing it on the 6 o'clock news. That's how positive that they were. They said the world has changed. The world will be forever never the same after what they witnessed with the Etherians coming down in these flying saucers. So, you know, again. So
I wrote an article about a 1955 tarmac meeting between then President Eisenhower and ETs. I don't know if this is the same story, because in the aftermath of that article, people wrote me and said there were more than one meetings between
Okay.
Eisenhower and ETs. But in 1955, this tarmac meeting occurred at what is now known as Holloman Air Force Base.
Air Force.
There were multiple witnesses, and one of them, an alleged witness, emailed me after that story was published in the dailyconspiracy.com and said he had been a young man stationed at Holloman when that happened, and a buddy of his had been outside and seen the UFOs come inside a hospital where the guy was working, said, you need to go out and take a look. He asked for permission from the nurse in charge, who asked the doctor in charge. They both denied. Well, the doctor said, no, he can't leave his duty station to go look at a UFO. And before the UFOs came, days before, the base, which would normally prepare a military parade and reception for the president's aircraft, Air Force One, they were told not to do that in this case, very subdued reception. And another guy's account was, I was supposed to be in the military honoring, welcoming committee, but opted out, decided to work instead, didn't want to be part of it. And he said, basically, he saw the whole thing. So we have witnesses. I did try to contact the guy who said he had been so close to the action, and his email account was already down. So people are apparently still in fear, or he was making it up. You know, that's the skeptical side of me. He wanted a little bit of attention. But many, many insiders are revealing what they know around the world, and we're getting a lot of deathbed confessions too. People just don't want to die with this heavy, heavy secret on their consciences.
Right.
Yeah. You know,
I also wanted to say too that there's many different forms of evidence that happen. For instance, myself and my husband, we also are part of TEMPS, which is the Eastern Paranormal Missouri Paranormal Society, and we do the paranormal investigations at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. We're the official investigative team there. And you know, if I don't know, before we even went there, I didn't have any information about it, never had been investigating. And then we went to an entirely different location that was just off of the grounds. And I had communicated with a spirit that was there that had worked there prior. And one of the employees that was on our team with us, who worked there to gain access to everything, she started asking a lot of point blank questions, like, what did he wear? Did he wear a uniform? And I gave very important information that was very detailed information about, his name was Frank. And so there was 12 questions that were asked that I just answered immediately and didn't think much of it. Later, well, 2 weeks later, when we came back to see the film being put together, Jen, she was staring at me quite a bit and I couldn't figure out why. And she just finally said, you know, Corae, I went to go investigate and get information about Frank, because I did know him, as you said. And every single thing you said is factual, and I was found that I could get all the information and it was all factual that you told me. And there's no way you could have had access to any of that, because I knew him and I didn't even know that stuff. So it's pretty cool when you have things that are validated. For me, it puts a lid on me having doubts about information I should just say. Because sometimes information is found out afterwards or isn't even known about that particular person. And they have to go back to family members or even documents to find out those things. And some things are never found out. But,
in other words, those validations constitute, at least in your own mind, proof that your psychic impressions are accurate.
Correct.
And that's what these empiricists miss, or these propagandists, as Doug is suggesting, you know, who's paying them to write these articles? Because I'm fortunately paid to write my truth, which is that UFOs do exist, ETs do exist. They have probably done long before humans have, and probably are partially responsible, if not completely responsible, for us being here. And that's a story for a different day. But before I start ranting and getting on my soapbox, let me welcome anybody who's just tuned in or recently tuned in to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast every Sunday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States and Canada on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. That's Broida. Please head over there and subscribe to my channel. Be a founder. This is a relatively new show. We have a great time talking about paranormal topics, and not only on my YouTube channel, but you can visit my website, which is under construction, tabootopics.life/shows, and shows are also available streaming and in the archive at Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. So with all that said, on this May 10th, 2020 edition of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, I am thrilled, in fact, to introduce our next guest panelist, Doug Auld, with his article. Take it away, Doug.
Thank you, Jean. That was great. And let me pull it over here so I can read. I'm a bit dyslexic, so if I stumble over things, that's why.
We're very forgiving.
I'm going to share with everybody a true event that happened in my house here that would certainly go under the paranormal. Okay. Now, to preface this, I am a person that finds it possible and actually easy to always have a camera and see something in the sky. And I have a number of UFO pictures that are not just little dots or a little something that anybody could write off as a fly or a bug, and they're daytime shots. And we could talk about that later. They are on my website. I have a little secret spot on my art website where I put the photos of my UFOs. And I seem to be able to see them. I'm always aware that that this is a reality. This exists, and so when I go outside and I take a walk around, it's with the intention, the action, and the word intention is very key here. It's with the intention that I know they're up there, or I'm going to see one or something. And when I go about my business out in the world and I don't have that intention, I will never see one, and I already am aware of that. So this is just how I see it. But let me read a thing that happened to me in my house. I put it in order, and let me just read it. Okay. It's called A Night Visitor. For years, I have been having odd night events. They begin as I'm lying in bed. A cold sweat and a chill comes over me, and a feeling that something is in my space and or approaching, ready to come up the stairs into my loft where I sleep. There seems to be an altered reality. I'm awake, but I'm not, like a subtle alternative reality. And these events would go on from time to time, but would never really manifest into anything. They would pass and I would go back to sleep. And this would go on for 6 months, a year. I remember it happening often. Then one night, feeling the same cold, clammy feeling, I was aware that something or someone was in my presence. I felt it behind me as I lay in bed. It seemed very dark and foreign to me, and I was very frightened. I cursed at it and said, "Get the heck out of here." Well, get the hell out of here, or probably even F out of here. And it left. I felt the pressure lift, and then I was okay. I just felt it leave. I was left with a scare and an elevated heartbeat, but the memory was very real. The next day, when I reassessed the event and that week, I wondered why I was so afraid and kind of berated myself for my lack of courage and curiosity. I was like, come on, this is your world, and you were such like a baby. You were so frightened. So I made the conscious decision to invite it back. I actually said out loud in my room, "I'm sorry, entity, whatever you were, please come back." Well, it did. So the night of its return, I can't remember if it was a day, 2 days, a week, a following week, but it returned. The night of its return, I went to sleep, meditating on the idea that an atom has more space in it than any kind of matter. And so most everything is really empty space. Everything is mostly nothingness, no matter how solid it is. And I had this image in my head from watching a Jim Marrs video where he showed a small illustration of this as I fell asleep to it. Then I woke in the middle of the night and became aware to this thing again behind me. But this time it lasted for a long time, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get out of it this time. It was like a person lying behind me with its head right next to my shoulder, like right here, and its arms wrapping around me, holding me by my wrists. I remember being restrained, and now it's nighttime, and I'm like, it's dark, but there's ambient room, light in the room. I knew it was dark black, almost burnt charcoal in appearance, but I dare not turn and around to look at it because it seemed too scary. I could hear its breathing, and I started to panic again. I started to hold on. It started to hold on to me and really press behind me. I could feel its pressure. I was struggling with it, saying, let me go, get out of here. But it got more determined. It was hard for me to talk and get out any of my words. I was quite scared. I was amazed how long it was going on. I felt its face right against mine. And then I remembered this had happened before, and I invited it back. I remembered I invited it back. So I got a little braver, settled myself down, and then I started to try to talk to it. I asked, are you an alien? It answered in a feminine voice, telepathically, yes. I then said, why am I so frightened? And it replied, I'm frightened too. And that answer actually amazed me. I was like, I'm frightened too. Then I tried to turn my head a little, and somehow I saw a glimpse of it, all creepy and dark. But then while still holding my wrists from behind, it presented an image to me, perhaps more pleasing for me. In front of me, in what I can best describe as a square window frame covered in a woman's stocking material, with the face behind the stocking. This image floated above me. I remember it floating above me as I looked up and off to the side, facing straight down. I remember seeing a beautiful face with long hair falling forward and behind the screen. I said to it, you're very beautiful. And it replied, I know. Then I got the feeling it was almost shy or embarrassed. This is very hard to explain, this nuance, but I knew it. I felt like it changed its mood after I said that. I asked its name, and it replied, Chandra. Chandra is the best I could make out of what it said. Chandra or Chandra. Then all of a sudden, and without struggle, it gently let go, dissipated, and its presence slipped away. The pressure and struggle was gone. I woke in bed, still in the same position I was on my side when I fell asleep. I just laid in bed, somewhat stunned and exhausted, going over the event with a elevated heartbeat. I was no longer afraid, just amazed. I felt whatever this event was, it was done. It was done for now and would never return. This is something I deeply sensed, like a completion. I eventually fell back to bed and woke up later in the morning. I have gone over this in my head many times and cannot explain what this event was. Now, I'll add a paragraph of one other event that I had happen in my life that reminded me of this, and it's the only two events I've ever had. The lucidity and believability of this encounter reminds me of a similar one involving my deceased grandmother, who had died years back. She visited me at my apartment door. I remember waking from sleep and going downstairs, turning on the light and going to the front door, and there she was, slightly glowing and angelic, but a figure, but still real. She just said to me, Douglas, everything is going to be okay. She walked a little more and said, everything is going to be okay. And I went, Nana, what are you doing here? And she said it one more time as she rounded the turn. And then that was it. And I found myself in bed, waking up. So both these events have nothing to do with what anyone would ever call a dream. And anyone that would ever tell me you just had a dream and then you woke up, I would vehemently disregard that whole comment. I know that they weren't. I know that the one I've best figured to be, in my own intuition and imagination, a visitation of a jinn, a discarnate being, a person in between lives, a person passed on that hasn't acknowledged that or let go, something, but something that when I interact with Chandra, in my attention to Chandra and allowing it to come back and being with it, I somehow provided some kind of service, some kind of release, some kind of letting go. I can't explain it. It's only intuitive stuff. And that was that. And the other one was a definite visitation from my grandmother. And ever since that, I studied near-death experiences extensively. So I know a good deal about them. And I believe that my grandmother just somehow got a message to me that don't worry about this life. Stay trusting in yourself. Do what you have to do. It's all going to be okay. So that's my story.
Well, I'm curious, and I apologize if you mentioned this already and I spaced it. How old were you for each of these incidents?
Probably in my 40s and 50s for both of these incidences. So not that long ago. I'm 66 now, so I'm thinking to myself, it couldn't have been any more than 8 years ago for Chandra. You know.
Do you still communicate with Chandra?
No, absolutely not. When that event ended, I had it told to me just intuitively, you'll never have one of these again. And I never had a chill or a weird feeling like something's in my room. I've never had that whole experience building up to it for a long time, for like years or so. I've never had that experience happen again. I no longer, in fact, I miss it. I'm like, why doesn't that happen to me anymore? It's like, I just don't get it anymore. So it was almost like something was finished.
Well, I've heard many times that if you want to contact other dimensional entities or extraterrestrial beings, ask, put out a request, a telepathic request, a prayer. When you're falling asleep, open yourself to divine inspiration or otherworldly help. Certainly there's no harm appealing to a guardian angel, that's or oversoul. You know, inspire me. I invite you to inspire me while I'm dreaming, or come visit me. And if I weren't so darn tired when I fall asleep, typically I would be more dedicated to doing that. But in my case, I think I have an agreement with the ETs. I know that I'm basically always conscious of the fact that ETs are present. It's just been part of my life growing up. That I know my government knows, and therefore I know. I don't need to see them with my own eyes. I may have been abducted as a very young child a couple times, which would explain a lot, but I don't claim it, and I haven't had a hypnotic regression. But people such as Corae, who are hereditary, lifelong, psychic, empath, intuitive mediums, are apparently always on, whereas you, Doug, invited one encounter. And in my case, my agreement, I know I have an agreement with these beings. I will work with you to raise consciousness on the planet as part of this great awakening and shift, the so-called dimensional shift from 3D to 5D, whatever it's going to be. I'm happy to help. I came here to help, but I don't want you popping up outside my window and scaring the pee out of me, if you don't mind. But I'm sure they've gathered around my bed at night. I just know it, especially as a child. I have a feeling that my lifelong interest is born of personal experience, which as a child I couldn't reconcile or explain or understand. And of course, no adult is going to say, oh, those were just aliens, no big thing. They're all saying it was a dream, a nightmare, all the things that you talked about, Doug. What do you think, Corae?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I was at a friend's house and she lives in the woods in Illinois. And I saw an Indian scout walk by on her deck. I was just looking at this. She goes, "What are you looking at?" And I told her, and she goes, "Oh, you see that?" Because she sees them all the time and they interact with her. But, so I see things on a consistent basis. But sometimes there's actually been times where I thought it was a living person because they were solid. We were having a discussion and then they walked away, and somebody else had been looking at me and said, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "Well, didn't you see that gentleman?" No, there was no one there, but I saw that person as I would see my husband or Eugene, like anyone. And sometimes it's so real that you can't tell the difference. Like my mom, after her father-in-law, after my dad's father had passed away, he loved coffee. He was German. He loved coffee. So in the middle of the night, my mom was in the kitchen and down the hallway walks my grandfather and she goes, "Oh, do you want a cup of coffee?" Like not being shocked at anything, saying, "Yeah, I'd love one." So they sat down and they had a cup of coffee each and they talked for about half an hour and then my mom went to bed. And in the morning she woke up and said, "Wow, that just seems so real." And when she walked into the kitchen, there were the 2 empty cups of coffee. And she knew that it had really happened, So hearing these things and having these things go on, I think it doesn't make you so afraid. It's like I see the paranormal shows and people get so scared. And I think that's rather, I don't know. I don't get scared of that.
You mean the shows on mainstream media, History Channel and stuff like that?
They make it up. And I know some of them are real, but yeah, I'm going to get startled if there's a loud noise and, I'm going to jump. But I'm not going to get scared of, a spirit. That it just doesn't happen to me. And even when I've been personally attacked, and I've had some attacks happen to me, but I have not been terrified, screaming, running around, and waving my arms in the air, right? So I guess I'm just more conditioned, I guess, to not have that shock value.
Well, insiders who claim to have worked side by side with extraterrestrials on highly classified government projects report that the first day they show up for work as a contractor, typically,
right,
they are introduced to the team. And here's Zorg or whoever, that was the bad guy in Fifth Element. But, here's this guy from, or entity, maybe not even with a gender. Here's an entity you'll be working with, a lieutenant in some other galaxy's military grade structure. And as a lieutenant, you're superior, you're working with an E2 who you have to take orders from, even that sort of thing. And at first it's a big shock, but then day after day after day, you acclimate, you get used to it. Right. But Doug, how did these, not so much your grandma, but when I'm intrigued that this entity said that she was also afraid, because one question I've had for a long time is, do ETs really have emotions, or are they imitating ours because we expect emotional responses? Your sense is that she was genuinely afraid? This entity was genuinely afraid, and I will unmute you so you can answer.
Well,
go ahead.
It's not that I know she was genuinely afraid. She just answered that way. I said, "Why am I afraid?" And she said, "I am too." So I thought that was, maybe that was to make me feel normal. Maybe she wasn't, but wanted to say, "Don't worry about it. I got you. I'm afraid too." It's like a camaraderie thing. I have a lot of observations about it, but one of the things I wanted to ask, I have more to say about it, but I wanted to ask both of you, what do you think that was?
I'm going to let Corae handle this one.
I think that is, personally myself, I believe that was an ET or alien that had been working with you behind the scenes when you're asleep, when you're going into possible astral traveling, because we go to other places. We can actually leave our bodies and we go to classrooms and we can be learning about other things. And I get the feeling more that she was a mentor to you, and that during the end of some of these classes that you have been taking with her, you had expressed a desire to actually remember when you were awake, because you never knew anything about it when you were awake. But when you went to the classrooms, you expressed a desire for something to happen where you could actually see that you're in classrooms, that you're meeting with beings that you actually know. And I think she appeared at the very end after you had finished your last class with her. And she appeared, so you knew subconsciously that this would happen, but you don't remember it in your consciousness when you're in your body here. So they have to take an action or a way that's not going to be traumatizing for you. Since she got to know you in the classroom, because your personality is still the same, she'll figure out ways in order to make you feel more comfortable as well. And when you scared the first time, she pulled back. And then when you said, well, I want this to happen, then there's this recognition subconsciously that you want this to happen because you've discussed it with her off-site, that she allows this to continue. And I think that was her way of saying hello and goodbye all at the same time. And I think it was meant also to trigger some memory so that you would start to, in this lifetime, start to remember, because many things are blocked from us knowing. We're not allowed to know that. It's like psychics being teased about the lottery numbers. Why don't you know the lottery numbers? Well, if I knew that, well, I probably wouldn't learn all the lessons I'm supposed to if I had all this money, So it sends your subconsciousness into working into your consciousness, the lessons that you've learned from being on these astral classrooms, as you would say. So this is a entity, or I'm going to say person, that you have known for many, many thousands of years. I'll tell you that. Because we have all lived ET and alien existences. We've had different lifetimes. I remember many of my lifetimes and who I was and what I was. I don't remember exact details sometimes, but I'll get a dream of a memory. And I can tell the difference between just a regular dream and a memory, because the memory dream is so overwhelming, and I just get the sense of being there, that it's a real thing. So that's what I think it is, that has happened to you. And I think it was meant to leave an imprint for you to remember things that you've learned.
Oh, thank you, Corae. That was interesting. I'll be giving it a lot of thought, and I'm open to all.
That sounds intuitively correct to me as well, although it hadn't occurred to me. The skeptic in me wonders if it couldn't as likely have been an extraterrestrial game of truth or dare, something along that line. I dare you to go haunt a human, or whatever. I find it very interesting that this entity felt the need to constrain you and perhaps keep you from lashing out until assured that you wouldn't hurt. Apparently, these beings are physically puny and mentally mighty.
It definitely gave me the impression it was a skinny little thing. So that's how it felt behind me. It felt like a frail. It didn't feel like it was like any kind of bodybuilding kind of being that was behind me. And but it is fascinating. I mean, I have had others. Gene, I think we spoke about this once, that I may have spoke to you once about the idea that the idea for the musical I'm writing, the show that has to do with this topic and disclosure. I said the name of it that I never heard before by just sitting up in bed in the middle of 4 o'clock in the morning. I just sat up in bed and said the word hypnotta, Hypnotta. And I never heard the word before. I didn't know where it came from. I wrote it down. I dwelled on it the next day and that following week. And that's what I allowed it to choose me. That's what I allowed to be the name of my show that I'm writing. So where do these messages come from? This hypnopompic and hypnagogic state, falling in and out of sleep, that little slice of time that they say people like Tesla and everybody would pick up, they would see their inventions in their dreams. And that's why they say in days past, when people paid more attention to this, people dozed off in a lazy chair in the afternoon with like marbles or stones in their hands. And then when they dozed off, they opened it, the stones hit the ground, it startled them and they became awake, and they would quickly write down anything they could remember in that little moment before the window closes, and that's what happens with these dreams. So it's, we live in a culture where people will go, oh, well, that was a dream. So as if a dream is discounted. And we live.
Yeah, they're dismissive about it. It was only a dream.
It was only a dream. That's how it's looked at, as if, oh, well, that wasn't real. It was only a dream. But this goes to our narrow vision of what real is. We don't even know what real is in the first place. So it's fascinating that we put, and other cultures, and maybe the Native American Indians, place so much more importance on their dream state and on dreaming and on what dreams meant for the tribe and the children and everybody than we do. I never hear a person talk about dreams, and most of the people that I know wouldn't even, oh, I don't dream, they go, I don't dream at all. And of course you do, but they're not tapped into dreams at all. They're walking in lockstep with this certain human doer mentality of just getting the job done and getting through another day and starting over. And they seem to be anesthetized to this whole kind of world. So, that's all. I just wanted to say that.
Well, that's actually a very good segue to the article I'm about to bring. But let's see if Corae has any final thoughts about your splendid article. Thanks for sharing your actual experience with us, Doug. We have Doug Auld and Corae Hack here on Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. What were you going to say, Corae?
I was going to say it was a really interesting experience that you had, because it wasn't a dream. It was all 100% real. And, that you were able to explain it in such detail just gives to the credibility of everything. Because a lot of people don't realize that we have an over-self, and we could be living another life, 2 other lives, 10 other lives, 100 other lives, the same time we're living this life. In time, sometimes we get glimpses and visions and sights and sounds from those other lives that we're living at the same time. And we can be in another dimension, and we can be in another planet. We can be on this planet. So a lot of people aren't realizing that there can be more of us all attached to our over self. And that gets a little bit confusing for people, but I mean, the amount that we need to learn in order to move higher on our ascension, you couldn't just do it in one life. I mean, you got to get all this experience going. And a lot of times it's because you're living 2, 3, 4 other lives, 5, like I say, many other ones. So I think that's awesome. And I think that experience of having her come to you, you knew it wasn't going to happen again, and you knew it was a hello and a goodbye. I think you probably subconsciously knew that it was a hello and goodbye. So I think that was, just awesome. And thank you for sharing that story with us.
You're welcome, Corae. Thanks very much.
And for anyone just tuning in, you have found us, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel of the same name, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. You can get to it from my website, tabootopics.life/shows. And the show is simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. We love to explore taboo topics on the show, and I'm up last but not least. As I've mentioned before, I write for thedailyconspiracy.com as Lightworker 111. Lightworkers shed light in the dark corners of reality as we know it and skitter those cockroaches. We want to find the truth and discourage the evil out there. 111 stands for synchronicity. It's no accident you're listening to this show, whether you're live streaming it or have downloaded the archive. Welcome all. Let's open our minds. And this blew my mind. The article that I wrote up, published 3 days ago. So this is hot off the press. This blew my mind. Pentagon admits UFOs are real and nobody cares. This was in the dailyconspiracy.com. The Pentagon just admitted that UFOs are real. Despite this absolutely stunning, shocking, world-shattering, paradigm-shifting news, most people don't give a toot because they are grappling with a new world order. The old world having been upended by fear-inspired socioeconomic policies that restrict our civil liberties. But on April 27th, 2020, just a couple of weeks ago, the Pentagon released 3 declassified videos that show U.S. Navy pilots engage bogies or unidentified aircraft. Excuse me just a moment. Thank you. Navy pilots were spotting bogies or unidentified aircraft, and each of the 3 videos were recorded by the pilots during training flights in 2004 and 2015. So the New York Times published 2 of these videos in 2017, and the 3rd video was released in March 2018 by the private scientific research and media organization To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science. The 2004 video shows an incident that happened off the southwestern coast of California and Mexico. The U.S. Navy's Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was performing routine operations to prepare for deployment to the Arabian Sea. For about 6 days in November 2004, the USS Princeton aircraft carrier picked up multiple anomalous aerial vehicles, AAVs, that's what they call UFOs now, on radar. The bogies plunged down from about 60,000 feet to 50 feet in mere seconds. The AAVs then hovered, appearing stationary on the radar for a short time before zooming away again at incredibly high speeds, making physics-defying turns. As I covered in my May 2019 article, so about a year ago, Navy report, Tic Tac UFO not from Earth. So from a year ago, we knew that on November 14th, 2004, Navy Pilot Commander David Fravor, now retired, and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate were flying in separate jet airplanes on a routine training mission 100 miles off the Pacific coast near San Diego when they were dispatched to intercept an AAV. Naval observers spotted an object that resembled an elongated egg or a tic-tac lozenge shape with a detectable midline horizontal axis. It appeared solid white, smooth, with no edges, was a uniform color with no nacelles, pylons, or wings. These are airplane parts. And it was about 46 feet long, they thought. Commander Fravor was pretty weirded out and commented, quote, "It accelerated like nothing I've ever seen," unquote. Then a second piece I wrote in May 2019, same time period, a year ago, was titled Navy UFO Disclosure, Full Speed Ahead. And in that similar article, I reported that Commander Fravor stated that the AAV moved randomly to all points of the compass and looked like a 40-foot-long tic-tac with no wings. The two 2015 sightings recorded by Navy aviators show objects moving quickly through the sky, one of them seeming to spin in the air, and one pilot exclaimed, "Look at that thing, dude, it's rotating!" A Pentagon spokesperson, and when they say spokesperson, that means woman. Okay, a Pentagon spokesperson stated that the unearthly aircraft captured in the Navy videos remain unidentified. And the nation's top defense organization wanted, quote, to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage that has been circulating was real or whether or not there is more to the videos, unquote. This was the justification the Pentagon gave for declassifying and authorizing the release of these 3 videos. Talking about his 2004 close encounter, Commander Fravor inasmuch said the craft were of extraterrestrial origin, quoting here, "I can tell you, I think it was not from this world," unquote. So here's the spokesperson, Susan Guff, G-O-U-G-H, Gow, speaking for the U.S. Defense Department, stated, "The Department of Defense has authorized the release of 3 unclassified Navy videos, one taken in November 2004 and the other 2 in January 2015, which have been circulating in the public domain after unauthorized releases in 2007 and 2017. The Defense Department representative then dropped a real bombshell, quoting here. "After a thorough review, the department has determined that the authorized release of these unclassified videos does not reveal any sensitive capabilities of systems and does not impinge on any subsequent investigations of military airspace incursions by unidentified aerial phenomena," unquote. Say what? After years of Pentagon denials, media ridicule, and CIA anti-UFO propaganda campaigns, now we the people are being told that those leaked videos are no big deal? Ufologists beg to differ. The Pentagon just validated all those crazy people, the establishment's term, by the way, who over the decades have reported seeing alien aircraft and interacting with their occupants. And as I said in my book, Unknown Objects, the top 10 US UFO cases, you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs or AAVs, whatever, dude. So this blew my mind. That's the end of the article. This blew my mind. The title says it all. Pentagon admits UFOs are real and nobody cares because there's this huge distraction going on in the world. And I don't want to get off on that subject because my topic is Pentagon, UFOs, leaked documents, leaked video, and more fundamentally, this is a theme I pursue a lot, the Navy pilots themselves. Put yourself in the place of a Navy pilot who has seen something unearthly and remarkable. And these pilots, by the way, Fravor and Strait, when they got back to their carrier, they were, and they said, we saw something really weird up there. We saw an AAV, we saw a UFO. Their crewmates mocked them and ridiculed them and razzed them because they too are the victims apparently of this propaganda. And they know that until recently, if any military personnel claimed to have seen UFOs, encountered UFOs, experienced UFOs, have evidence of UFOs, that was the end of their career, possibly their life. They would have threats on themselves and their families. Many of these witnesses are made to sign off on paperwork saying, I will not disclose what I know. And if I do, I understand there are consequences such as losing my pension. I mean, that's the least of it. Losing my pension, maybe getting killed, my family being hurt. Nobody wants to go there. So this is like unto this revelation that the Pentagon has declassified and authorized for release 3 videos from Navy pilots, and many other Navy pilots have said, we see this stuff all the time. We see every week, every day, every month, we see stuff in the sky that's zip zooming around. It can't be conventional aircraft. We know they're not conventional aircraft. And yet we can't talk about it at work, at home, nobody can talk to anybody at a bar anymore, but in public, we can't even go in public. But what I'm saying is they can't talk to anybody. They're muzzled. This creates a lot of psychological pressure, just like you've had a vivid dream or you've had a waking near-death experience, that sort of a thing, an out-of-body experience that such as Doug and Corae have just related. You have an experience like that, such as something I had in my childhood where I woke up from a very vivid dream that was probably a UFO encounter, an alien encounter, and my mom came in because I was shrieking and screaming, and she says, it was just a nightmare. So here we have the Pentagon saying UFOs are real. Nobody's paying any attention because they're worried about other stuff, and rightfully so. I'm not saying they're wrong, but it's like unto Donald Rumsfeld announcing the day before 9/11/2001 that 2.3 at the time trillion dollars was unaccountable from an audit of the of the Pentagon books, accounting books. Now, unaccountable doesn't mean missing. It doesn't mean that. It means that the accounting was never detailed. And that is typical of black operations. Black operations don't have to be accounted for. Much of what goes on at the CIA, as I understand it, the NSA and DARPA even, doesn't have to be accounted for as a black operation. And so the money is spent. We don't know, the public will never know exactly what that money was spent on. And it's not clear in my mind, based on evidence that I've seen as a researcher, that anybody really knows where this money has gone. That, in other words, we know that some illegal, unethical businesses might cook a second set of books. They have the real books and then they have the fake books for the IRS. We don't know if anybody has the real books ever since the beginning of these organizations back in the Truman and Eisenhower era. So I know that Corae and your husband, Ian Hack, are familiar with this story, and I know that you're both interested in the To the Stars Academy. What was you've heard of this, Corae? What was your reaction to all this? I'm just curious.
There, I'm unmuted now. Well, we've known about this for a long time, and we had actually done an To the Stars Academy presentation to MUFON, and we put this presentation to get together, connecting all the dots of who is everyone and whatnot. And the night before we had the presentation came the official word from To the Stars Academy with this news clip from Luis Elizondo. And so we managed to be able to squeeze this in at the very end of our presentation. And half the people at the MUFON meeting who are up to date on a lot of this, when did that come out last night? So it was a kind of a preemptive strike to get the information out there. And Grant Cameron is an amazing researcher and journalist and reporter. We met him in Eureka Springs when they had the UFO conference there a couple of years ago.
You mean Grant Cameron? Grant
Cameron, yeah.
Grant Cameron. And by the way, for listeners and viewers who aren't familiar with MUFON, it's been mentioned several times. This is the Mutual UFO Network, one of the oldest UFO reporting organizations in the nation, with local branches everywhere. And you can go to their website if you want to get MUFON information. Back to you, Corae.
Right. And the thing that stands out, with Grant, I mean, he has just said about information that's coming out. It has to come out because of the Space Force that they want to have going. I mean, how can you have a Space Force and then there's no StarCraft? It makes no sense. How can you do that? So Grant Cameron said that we can't look at all the nuts and bolts anymore. We have to talk to the experiencers. And that's us, all of us. We need to be listened to, because it's not nuts and bolts anymore. It's experience.
And don't you, what I take away from that statement, I'm familiar with that, is that we understand, we ufologists at least, and experiencers understand that UFOs exist. We understand that the nuts and bolts, the hardware exists. We get that. Right. But what came out in research and reverse engineering of these craft, at least down on Conspiracy Street, is that ET craft operate in conjunction with their occupants, that the craft has consciousness. It's actually a biological entity, and that the craft and the occupants work together, operate together to pilot the craft.
Yes.
So we understand the craft exists, the hardware exists. Now let's get into this consciousness component. How do we fly these craft? How do we communicate with these beings? Is that your take on it, Corae?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I've done remote viewing and whatnot, and that kind of, goes towards all of it as well. I'm an antenna. We're antennas, and we're like a radio station. So whatever happens to be coming in, we somehow automatically start to zoom in on these different frequencies, analog and what other kind of frequencies are out there. And sometimes we don't even know what frequency we're on, because if somebody's sending something to us, we're going to receive it. So we just have to be aware and be practiced in the way that we're able to interpret those messages and those kinds of things. And with me, it's sometimes as if somebody's talking in my ear. Other times it's just an idea that came in my head. So many different things. I see flashes sometimes of what things are. So we have to practice, as everyone is intuitive. Everyone has got the ability to become somewhat of a psychic if they develop that talent and that gift. And then there's the gifted psychics who are given that talent. And then, of course, there's mediums and all kinds of other things. But, I was just going to quickly talk about dowsing rods.
Well, before you do, I want to let Doug weigh in on this article. So, Doug, okay. Article: Pentagon admits UFOs are real and nobody cares. We've talked. Corae brought up Grant Cameron saying nuts and bolts, fine. Consciousness is where it's at with experiencers. Grant Cameron very well. What's your response to all of this?
Yeah, great article. I'm very well aware of it. I've been following that. So here's one of my takes on what's been going on, because I see this in a cross-section of people that are my friends that I interact with that are not people in this category of the four of us sitting here, okay? I play hockey with a bunch of knuckle-dragging guys. I have some family members who are pretty much caught. I don't mean this demeaningly, but they're pretty much in the drill of survival and every day, okay? We have had so many various false flags happen throughout our history, from this to that, to JFK, 9/11, where any thinking person, all the school shootings, okay? And I'm not here now saying that nobody was killed. I'm not here saying any of that. I'm just saying we have had so many incidences along the way that have proven to people that you can't believe anything. It comes out, and I could tell my friend, hey, here's an article that verifies that UFOs are real. And he'll be like, oh, that's BS, or that's this, or that's that. Or I don't think Sandy Hook is really a legitimate story. There are a lot of things that don't add up in my mind. I'm not trying to say, but I can't go near it all. And over the years, since maybe JFK on up, we've been beaten over the head with this idea that nothing is real, nothing can be trusted. So it's almost like smoking the bees, you know what I mean? They smoke the beehive to such a degree that when the time finally comes, when something is going to be told that's absolutely critical and honest and true, it has no effect. It just has.
When you were talking, I've got to interrupt you. When you said, you made the comment, people have been conditioned to believe that nothing is real. And you started with JFK, which I also cite as the beginning of the end of civilization as we know it here in the United States.
Right.
Okay. He and Carter were the last two presidents that talked meaningfully about peace in the world, in our country and in the world. But what we learned was not that everything is false. What we learned is not that nothing is real. What I learned, at least, was that my government is full of big fat liars.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the government lies and lies and lies and lies, I think this is what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, and then comes out and tells the truth about something, your skeptical friends, your naysayer friends are saying, well, they talk so much nonsense. Who knows what's true? Who knows what's false? Am I right there?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what I meant. I didn't mean that nothing is real, like my table or my couch, or I wasn't talking about getting into quantum physics. I was talking about the fact that media-driven news and our governments present something or control the narrative to such a degree that everything seems to be like it's told today, and then next week you find out it's debunked, or the following week it's dropped out of the news. So if it was real last week, why is it dropped out of the news and there's no follow-up? Nobody ever hears any kind of follow-up. You'll see something on the news about the fact that there are no plane parts in Shanksville. You can't find a plane that hit the ground. But then the following week, there's no follow-up. There's no investigation. Nothing seems to add up. And if you hit people over the head enough times with these kinds of things that anesthetize, I call it anesthetizing the public to any kind of truth, then if actually does have impact, it no longer has any impact. It's just sort of dissolved. And I have a friend, and I told him this. I said you actually don't know what you don't know. That's your ace in the hole here. He said, Dougie, if a UFO landed and an alien being came to my door and knocked on my door, he goes, I wouldn't even care. He'd say, hey, have a good night, and walk away. See, he doesn't know that he would care. He's so far removed from the reality of what we've been sold and what we're living for so many years, believing in church religions, believing in things structured a certain way. He's so ingrained in that and so far removed that these seem like flippant, easy answers to just say, oh, I wouldn't be affected by that. You wouldn't be affected by that, really? That you just learned there's life from beyond this planet, and there's a whole new structure and way of thinking, and that everything in your history books is inaccurate, everything in your science books is inaccurate, and that doesn't matter to you? See, this is how they'll answer. So I don't mean to be wandering too far off your article, but you have to, and talking about, does anybody know the name David Adair? Okay, so David.
Yeah,
Adair,
I met David at Contact in the Desert West late May, early June. Go ahead.
Okay, so you know David Adair. Well, David Adair was one that totally brought out the idea that the engine, or the thing that he sat on and was asked to help work on after he was shooting off his rockets, and one went near an Area 51 site, from I remember his interview.
They directed him to lob it into the dry lake bed that was Groom Lake, apparently.
Groom Lake.
And then ignored the rocket, which was a perfect launch,
Yeah.
and escorted him into a warehouse or a hangar and had him lay eyes on and then hands on this craft. And he said it didn't take him long to realize this thing was living. It was organic and responding to him. And that's what made me think of that.
Absolutely. It wasn't actually a craft. It was engine.
Well, you're cutting out a little bit there, Doug. I don't know what's going on.
Like, he was on it. You froze also earlier. You froze. Are you there?
Yeah, I think everybody froze maybe there for a moment. I think we're back though. So go ahead.
I'm here too.
So I was saying
Okay.
that David Adair was actually who I was thinking of when I said that craft have conscience. And there was another story too, but you're talking, so go ahead.
So anyway, yeah, so David Adair got on top of the engine. They didn't know what it was or how it worked, or they had a problem with it. And they got this whiz kid missile guy who shoots off rockets and understands how to work rockets to sit on it. And he said in very short fashion, he realized the way, almost the way a CD looks with the rainbow colors on it when you put it in the sun and everything. He said, this thing was reacting to my emotions. It was alive. This is an engine that's alive and part of something that's like just incredible. So, you fast forward to Grant Cameron and what Grant is doing these days with consciousness. And that's why Grant is moving far more into consciousness, because we've seen a lot of these dots, lights in the sky, objects and things, and we just keep chasing our tails in a sense. And I think Grant was ready to make another move and to start talking about the consciousness aspect of this entire thing. And so there's a lot more I have on mind that right now I can let go, but I'm amazed. And by the way, those films that they released, yeah, they were allegedly leaked at first. So first they were leaked, then now they're officially released. And I don't know if you have seen this, but Senator Harry Reid, former Senator Harry Reid, has come out to say it's just the tip of the iceberg. Did you see him say that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I follow these stories. I do. And these are indeed interesting times. Interesting times. And I have to tell you, it's the time in the show, and the show is Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast Sunday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern in the United States and Canada on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, at tabootopics.life/shows, and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. It is the last little bit of our show here, and it's that time when I thank my illustrious guests, Doug, Auld, and Corae Hack, for joining me here today, bending our minds and expanding our consciousnesses with these really interesting and dovetailing, it seems to me, articles of interest, of paranormal interest at least. Really, I can't do a show like this without you, and I'm so happy that you joined me here today. So let's each take a few moments to extol our virtues and do some shouting out and maybe a little bit of shameless self-promotion. What's the harm? Let's go ahead and start with Corae.
Well, if anyone wants to get in touch with myself or Ian, we've got a group page called St. Louis Lightworkers for Truth and Disclosure on Facebook. You can always message us there. Join our group. We'd love to have you. We post many videos, and we encourage people to post their videos and their interviews, like Jean posts her interviews on our page. We love to have discussions about different things, so that's also been very popular. And when this particular pandemic is kind of over and we're not being so socially distanced, if you're interested in having a ghost hunting close to St. Louis, Missouri, or close within Illinois to the St. Louis, part of temps, and we can do a paranormal investigation with our team. So you could reach out for that. And the last piece of information I got from a couple of viewers that had watched your programs, Jean, that I encouraged them to watch, they asked me if I can just let them know on video what they can do if they're not psychic. Well, I'm not psychic, what can I do, right? So I actually going to answer that question. You can do things like learning how to dowse. There are different websites you can learn how to dowse from right now. There are workshops that are available for dowsing as well. And so dowsing, basically, for those of you who don't know it, are basically rods. You hold them, and there's a series of things that you go through with your dowsing rods, and you can do that because you get straight answers. you're given, I bought this book and it's called Dowser's Guide to Sentient Entities. So regarding ETs and whatnot. So you will have charts that are included and guides, and they give explanations, for instance, on how to get closer answers for everything. Now I'll put the name of the right there is where you can go to find these books that they sell. I got this at Contact in the Desert. It's a little pricey, but I think it's really worth it. It's around $50.
Does it come with the rods?
What's that?
Does it come with the dowsing rods?
No, those are separate. You have to purchase those separate, or you can even just make some from a couple of coat hangers at home too.
We always made ours from copper coat hangers. I don't know if they still make copper coat hangers. Copper is highly conductive, and the idea behind dowsing, for people who've never done it or know much about it, is that the rods become antennae for your own psychic and physical energies, right, Corae?
Right.
As Corae is demonstrating there. And now her rods have handles, so they swivel freely. But if you don't have handles on your rods, if you've cut coat hangers and bent them into an L shape with a short handle, you hold them loosely in your fists and parallel to the ground, and they will swing. They naturally will swing. And go ahead, Corae.
So also you can just go to a plumbing supply and get little copper tubings and just get like a foot, and you can put your coat hangers in that too. So there's a lot of ways to make these yourself. You don't have to be psychic, but it'll increase your intuition, and it will just get the motors running in your brain and being able to figure out that, hey, I do have some intuition. I am able to get some answers on my own and understand what's going on. So taking little workshops, look for them on the internet, and they can be found quite easily, right? So,
thanks for sharing that, because you bring up an interesting point. People will say, I'm not psychic, but ask those people, have you ever experienced deja vu? This feeling that you've been in a situation before? Have you ever had a dream come true, a prophetic dream? Have you ever met somebody who seemed really, really familiar, but you couldn't quite place it? There are hints all around us that psychic stuff is going on. Would you not agree?
Right. And pendulums, they can give you a simple answer. I lost this, and you can use them to go find it. It was usually come up, they made them to find water for water dowsing, and it works 100%. The cities use dowsers to find water and whatnot still to this day. So it is more than just psychic mumbo jumbo. It's actually a science-based way of doing that. So I would start with that, start to do some meditation, going within yourself. And those things are going to start to get you in the zone of being able to listen to things that are going on around you. So that's the information I would give. And I wanted to share that with everyone out there, because they wanted to know, well, what can I do?
That's awesome. And I've heard dowsers say they can douse for things other than water, including minerals, precious minerals, and I'll leave that to your imagination. Doug Auld, shout it out, buddy.
Hey, first of all, Corae, that was great. And I have friends who've talked to me about dowsing, and I have a psychic friend out in Shelter Island, older woman who's very, very experienced, and she says, and she's a healer, and she can do a lot of amazing things. And she has told me absolutely everyone has this ability, but if you don't, it's like singing. If you don't practice your singing, you're not going to sing well. If you don't practice the piano, how do you expect to play it? So, but you do have within you the ability. So that's great. And I'm curious about that book. As far as myself, okay, I mainly have an art website, and I'd like to share that with everyone if that's okay. It's www. My full name, Doug Auld, DOUGAULD.com. And if you add onto that, www.dougauld.com/UFO, which very few people know about. But if you go there, then you'll see a group of daytime photos and images of UFOs, things that I've shot in the sky that defy description. And
I'm going there right now. Keep talking.
Okay. And Gene, I may have mentioned to you that I do have a very, very high level intelligence friend in one of the alphabet agencies. I don't know if I've mentioned this to you, but anyway, he's very high level. And he has looked at those photographs, and he would be the first person to tell me, come on, Doug, you got to be kidding. You got a weather balloon. You got a Frisbee flying through the air or whatever. And I explained them to him and showed them to him, and he scratched his head and he goes, these are really amazing photographs. And he had no debunking quality in him. And he's probably one of the more well-known sort of people in that field, sort of part of the Avery type of level of intelligence. Right. And he verified that they're pretty darn good. They're pretty, he didn't want to confirm anything. He didn't want to deny anything, but he saw them all. So anyway, that's on my website if people want to see the UFOs. Otherwise, you can see my artwork. You can see the series of works that I've done and taken on. The 100 whistleblowers. You can look at each person and click on those paintings and see a bio for each one of them and kind of get an idea why I painted them. And I view that series of work, 100 portraits, as one work. So they're not for sale unless you buy all 100. It's one piece of work, and I hope to install it in traveling shows, museums, universities, wherever. And Stephen Bassett told me once that after seeing them, he said, Doug, never sell this because the day is coming, and this is going to be a very, very, very famous series of artwork. But I basically look at this UFO, ufology, and phenomenology topic as something that I'm trying to use my art, my music, my creativity to contribute to and to further keep going. I feel my mission is that. I feel my job in the ufology world is to interpret it to the average everyday person, not demeaning them, just saying maybe you haven't seen this, to help wake them up to something through culture, music, and art. So that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what my website is dedicated to. And my new musical, my stage musical, that is in final stages of completion. I have 15 songs for it. I probably need about 20. And Broadway shut down, so I have to pitch it soon to other avenues. This would be an amazing show to ever get on the stage, because if you wanted to understand a little bit about what it's like E.T. meets the Wizard of Oz. And it brings to people the story without hitting them over the head, without being overly preachy, without being overly scientific. It's clean. There's no foul language or no curse words in the entire show. It's for a young adult audience up to any age. And it's my way of working to try to bring this disclosure of this amazing topic to a broader audience.
And while Doug and I have only recently met, as with many people in the paranormal community, we became fast friends. Yeah. And he shared with me one of the songs from his musical. I have to tell you, there is literally finger snapping in it, and it is toe tapping, and it is going to be rollicking good fun. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're using your creativity in a somewhat whimsical way, whimsical, but there's a serious undercurrent. This becomes very palatable to a lot of people who otherwise, nobody wants to be preached to, Yeah. I present facts, I know you do too, and let people make up their own minds. Am I right?
Let me add to that is that the song you probably heard was Even Einstein Struggled. And it's a conversation between a regressionist type scientist person and a pastor, a pastor. And it's a discussion about the Einstein-Niels Bohr conversation about what is real.
Right. And I'm stopping you there for the sake of time. And because you want to leave the audience wanting more, my final question to you, Doug, is, or at least for now, is, do you invite people to contact you on Facebook or by email, other than just visit websites?
You can go to my website and you can visit me on my email, which is very simply doug@dougauld.com. And I love emails. I love questions. And the last thing I wanted to say about what you were mentioning is the show isn't only whimsical. That was just one song of the show that was whimsical. Very heavy topics dealt with in a very palatable manner.
And as I said, if you're just tuning in, you're at the tail end of Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, broadcast 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern, Sunday nights on my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, at tabootopics.life/shows, and simulcast on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network. I write as Lightworker111 for the dailyconspiracy.com and other publications. And I have a website, lightwork111.com, which is a work in progress, but I have some writing up there. I haven't been keeping up with it, I admit it. I am on Facebook, should you care to look for me there. And I invite anyone with any comments, questions, concerns, or criticisms, please be kind, to email me, Jean, Jean, at lightwork111.com. And my final comment for my shout outs is a shout out to Shelley Luther. This is the American Patriot hair salon owner in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, who refused to apologize to a judge for opening her shop in violation of shutdown orders because she needed to feed her family, and her salon operators who rent space from her needed to feed their families too. And the judge was going to waive jail time if she apologized to the court. She refused to do so. She got socked with a $7,000 fine, a week in jail with no bail. And as a consequence, there's been a lot of ballyhoo about this story. Spirit and letter of the law are being discussed, constitutionality. The state law of Texas has just been changed. The governor changed the law, no more jail time for violating stay-at-home orders. No more of that. Trump paid a visit, talked to the governor. So I admire this woman, Shelley Luther, because she stood up for what she believes is right to help herself and her family and her closest associates. And she wasn't being unreasonable. She opened her shop with reasonable precautions, safety measures to prevent infection. That's all I'm going to say. People can reach their own conclusions. If you haven't heard of Shelley Luther, go check her out. We have a couple minutes left. I've finished talking. Corae, final thoughts?
Everybody get Jean's book. I got her book when she first got it out, and it's excellent. It's very accurate, and you're going to learn a lot from Jean's book. So I encourage you to purchase her book.
And
go out and look for different people that are out there. Stephen Greer and Mary Rodwell has got amazing books. Frank Strange's, who died, David Clark, and Margie Kay. Margie Kay is from Independence, Missouri here. Awesome.
Margie Kay on the show recently.
Yes, exactly. So, go back to Edgar Casey and James D. Prescott. Go back to these people. Watch Grant Cameron's videos. I mean, awesome. Christine Day, and we got Peter Slattery, we got Barry Littleton. Just go out and start looking for stuff to watch. If you're at home, take advantage of the time to research and learn. That's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you for endorsing my book, which I forgot to promote. Shame on me. Here comes some shameless self-promotion. It is called Unknown Objects, the Top 10 U.S. UFO Cases, and it is an historical look back, 10 stories, originally 10 pages each, but I really got into it. So on average, the chapters are about 20 pages long. So the ones at the beginning are shorter because we know less about what happened after World War II. But as we go forward in time, we get more and more and more documentation. And I'm telling you what, by the time we get to the Phoenix Lights in 1997, as I said before at the beginning of the show, read my book and some of these other sources that all of us have brought up in the show today, and you'll find out why you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs. And by the way, the Pentagon just said UFOs are real. Doug, final words?
That's great, everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you, Gene, for having me on. It's been a pleasure, and it's great to meet you, Corae. I'm really happy to meet you. We have a lot in common. We could talk about more. I wanted to bring up O negative blood and what people thought of that. Maybe that's for another time. Just wanted to, just basically wanted to say that we're living in a paradigm shift sort of time. All this stuff is coming at us really, really fast, and trust our instincts. We have good intuitions. We've got to trust our instincts. We've got to hold on. We've got to find a way to spread the word without alienating people, especially politically, because I think we're in trouble if we don't. It's just my own opinion. I think we're in trouble if we don't see what's going on here and remain with the present president, because I see him as the only hope. This is my own opinion, based on what I know about on the other side, touching on the deep state, the warring side of things, the pedo issues going on. It's all very deep, all very concerning, and we got to kind of stay vigilant and stay awake. So I guess that's really all I wanted to say. I'm going to continue to do what I do. And also a book I'd like to mention to everybody is by Nancy Tremaine. Nancy's a good friend of mine. Nancy is an amazing person. And I was speaking to her today, and she has two books out. And her books by Nancy Tremaine should definitely be looked at. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but for a second, it's slipping me. There's two of them. And all you got to do is Google Nancy Tremaine and look at her books. Preordained is one of them. I know that. And the first one escapes me at the moment. But anyway, that's it. That's all I really wanted to say. And we probably could talk for hours, but everything is great.
Well, we could talk for hours. I just know it. And you just introduced a whole slew of new topics. So I'm going to have you back, Doug. And I just want to thank from the bottom of my heart, very sincerely and genuinely, my two superior guest panelists on today's show. This is the May 10th, 2020 edition. Thank you, Corae Hack. Thank you, Doug Auld, for joining me here. And that's our take on it. Thank you, everyone, for listening in to Taboo Topics with Gene Broida on my Taboo Topics YouTube channel at tabootopics.life/shows and at Global Enlightenment Radio Network.com. See you next week. Over and out.
One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.